kina semdol ka ke mo fa seda.
Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online. I am Matterall, and I'm here with Silver Suspiria. How you doing, Silver?
I'm good. Pleased to have you on the show today, Matterall.
Yeah, thanks for letting me come in here. All right. Oh, look at that. We're floating in space. Is that a Megatron?
It's supposed to be a Kronos.
A Chrono. Okay.
Big bad marauder.
All right, cool. Well, it's good to see you. Thanks for having me on the Midweek show. What are we going to cover today?
Today, I'd like to cover treaty and faction warfare in the Minmatar Amarr war zone. We last covered it a few weeks ago. It was a very interesting topic, and I'd like to catch up.
Yeah, sounds good. I've been curious about this because there's been some information. I wasn't sure if it was accurate about the treaty and then the nature of the treaty. Was it still going? Was it broken? Was it breaking up? How many people were still involved with it? Because it's very interesting how players, again, with emergent gameplay, created their own situation, regardless of what the mechanics were. They saw a problem, they wanted to fix it, they formed a treaty to do it. It took a lot of trust. And did that break down? Or did it go for a long time? Who knows? We'll find out tonight. So who do we have with us here? Let's see. Well, from formerly Dirt and Glitter, we have Gamatar. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Awesome. You're currently in Honor Guard, is that right?
Yeah, down towards South Honor Guard. It's a small Minmatar Amarr loyalist corporation. Kind of RP, not quite.
Don't switch sides yet. Awesome. Well, good. Thanks for coming on very short notice to Talking in Stations. And we also have on the other side from Ushra Khan, their CEO, Harkin Thorson.
Hello.
Hey, Harkin. You're in Europe, so thanks for staying up as late as you are for the show.
Well, I took an alarm clock. I actually did sleep some.
Oh, I took a disco nap, so you're ready to go. Okay, good. Well, awesome. Do you want to set it up, Silver, and let us know like some of the background and stuff, or maybe we can throw it to the guests?
A little background on the issue, and guys step in when you want to. But when we last left off, the Amarr militia and Minmatar militia had an agreement that there was something broken about faction warfare, right? Namely the missions and the LP payout accordingly, right? So this is a function within faction warfare that's often farmed by people who don't really participate in the combat or the lore aspect of faction warfare, but they use it to make money, right? So they push the war zone back and forth, they manipulate LP pricing, and they cash in on the missions, which reward is with LP. So the players kind of took it in their own hand and agreed to lock each other's mission stations out as a way of stating that the LP system may need to be looked at, or some new mechanic may need to be developed. Is that about right, guys?
Well, it's a bit. Or our approach was actually a bit broader, at least from the Ushra Khan perspective. Faction warfare has a lot of problems. Missions is one of them, but it's not the only problem. If you look at faction warfare, it hasn't seen a proper update in years. So there's a lot of stuff that is wrong with it, and it's a very good aspect of the game that many people enjoyed or still enjoy partly, but it's something that needed to be worked on. And the missions is one of the many things that is wrong with it. And we saw this as an opportunity to raise awareness that faction warfare is actually still a thing and that it needs an update as soon as possible. And that is why at least Ushra Khan joined in on it. Obviously, you described it, the missions are something that's been farmed a lot. We see that now, little spoiler, as the treaty is down, there's mission runners all over the place. And that is where we started. So, yeah, I don't actually remember the exact date of the last Talking Station where we were on with Flying Hot Pocket and with Templar Dane, where we introduced the whole thing.
Yeah, this was about a month and a half ago.
Yeah. So it was I mean, I can go through what happened from my perspective from that point on, I guess.
Yeah,
if you
catch
want.
us up. Like, what happened? What came of it? What was the interludes? I see you got a lot of coverage on Eve Media and in the forums and stuff. So, walk us through what happened. Was there fighting? Was there a breakdown? Did people pull out early?
Well, we had, if I remember correctly, we had already established last time that it wasn't Amarr militia and Minmatar militia as a whole. It was groups within Amarr militia, and it was one group in Minmatar militia, which was Ushra Khan. And for the Amarr, it was Dirt and Glitter, Amarian Vengeance, if I remember correctly, then Siege Gold, 44th Recon, and, God damn it, there was 5.
Yeah.
Forgot the 5th. Yeah, Yondu, right, sorry. And there was already from the start an opposition against it. People didn't want to give up the systems that they called home, which obviously is their right to do. So there were fightings from the start, but not a lot. I would say a slight increase in PvP in the first maybe week or two of trying to establish the status quo that we wanted, so that all Minmatar mission hubs would be in Amarr hands and vice versa. And it took us actually until the 27th, if I remember correctly, of October to establish that, so that no missions in LowSec could be run in the Minmatar and Amarr Warzone. And from there, it held about a month properly. So I think it was the 25th around where Siege Gold then withdrew. Slightly before that, I think Dirt and Glitter announced, or the CEO of Dirt and Glitter announced, that they would be standing down as an corp. So we had already one group falling out, one group withdrawing from the treaty for reasons that they should explain. It's not up to me, I think. And that left us with... Come again?
Yeah, so also Yondu has significantly withdrawn about midpoint through the treaty. Not so much because of the treaty, but because of other reasons on that front. But I think by about 2 weeks into the lockdown, around half of the Amarr side was down or much lower activity than they'd been.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
what do you think that is? Is because some of the corps considered those station systems their home and were kind of hurt that they had to like turn it over, or was it that maybe some of your income was cut short and people didn't like that? What were some of the rubs?
There's a lot of different reasons, I think. In the case of Yondu, they got a lot of their structure bashed in by, I think Baltron was the last one to bash some of them, but they, and Predator Elite bashed a few of theirs as well. So they were running out of steam at trying to keep their Asbels and structures up. So that affected them, and then their alliance leader gave up on, and so that cut a lot of their activity.
So Predator Elite from, did he say Jump?
Yep, the one and all.
So you had third-party interference then. You had other forces hitting on you when you were trying to focus on this.
Yeah, I don't know if that had anything to do with the treaty or just because they had a juicy Asbel to shoot.
Sure, yeah.
So, by the way, just point of reference, the last time you were on the show, Harkin, was October 17th.
Okay. So yeah, it took us another 10 days from there to establish it with the fall of Auna into Amarr in hand. Just as on the withdraw or less activity on the Amarr side, there's been a lot of discussion about that, if that was due to the treaty, but I don't think it was related to LP or income, because the Amarr had been in high tier for ages, so they would have had all the LP they wanted at this point. It also, I don't think, was a thing of home systems, because the only group that really had a home system that was changed due to this, at least that I'm aware of, wasn't part of the treaty in the first place, and so didn't really count into this, I would say. But I tried to explain it on the Faction Warfare Discord. In the end, we tried to make it so that there is an update on faction warfare to cure all the disease that we see in it, so all the little problems. And our medicine was this blockade, and the medicine didn't kill those corpses. They were already sick to a point where the medicine couldn't help them anymore, if you understand the analogy there. So I think I don't think Predator Elite was aiming at Yondu to get them out of the pact or anything. It was just a usual pressure from pirate groups and inactivity from leadership, in the case of Dirt and Glitter, as far as I'm aware, real life stuff coming up, and the groups being at a very low level to begin with. So we're talking about groups that had like 10 active members at the point when we started. It went down from there.
Absolutely. When we, at the peak of activity in the Amarr side, the Pro Treaty Amarr side, was when Arzad fell. Yeah, well, we can disagree on that name.
I love that. I love that little jab at each other.
When Arzad fell, the bulk of the plexing was done by Joint Fleet, actually. So Amarr and Vengeance, Dirt and Glitter, they formed an alt corp that was Minmatar, so they could actually plex. And then we had significant participation from Ushrakan. It was very much an all hands on deck to take Arzad. And that was done in, I think the plexing was done in 37 hours.
It was insane. And I would say that was more or less the high point of the whole treaty, when everyone actually worked together to get that system.
Yeah, I totally agree. After that, it was just mopping up mostly. The Amarr side was more or less willing to ignore honor just because it was inconvenient. And then I think there was some interpersonal thing that happened, and then it became personal for the Avenge people, and they flipped it. But once all the systems were held, it turned into deplex, just deplex systems that were being plexed. The tier level of the factions dropped for Amarr significantly. Right at the start, we were in tier 4, and then by the time the treaty was in full effect, we were in tier 2, which for us was a big drop. For Minmatar, it was a significant step up, I think.
So to clarify for users that may not be familiar with faction warfare mechanics, it's basically a big tug of war match, right? So you're plexing. The term plexing means you're capturing nodes that are in a system, and like a tug of war, the more you capture, the closer you get to victory, right? And then the overall picture, the tiers you're talking about, is the more systems you control within the war zone for your militia, it affects your LP payout for militia activities such as missioning and capturing plexes, right? Or complexes, as they're really called.
Absolutely, and it's a big effect. Like the LP numbers are balanced for tier 2. You get half at tier 1. So when you drop to tier 1, the impetus to do any activity really drops. And if you get all the way to tier 5, you get 225% bonus to LP, which is nuts, right? The level 4 mission will give you 115,000 LP in 5 minutes.
Yeah, tier 5 is sort of that thing. Call in sick and just spend all day doing faction warfare activities and bank that LP, right?
Right. And Amarr has been in tier 4 and tier 5 for quite some times. I know most of the active people were sitting on tens of millions of LPs.
LP, loyalty points. This might be, let's see if we can break this down even further for people who hear faction war and don't know much about it, like me. Faction war came in around 2007, 2008, and then it had a period of not really getting off the ground for a while, but then they made some changes to it, I don't know, like 2012-ish, where it got kind of popular.
Yeah.
And mostly there is no real win condition for faction war. So these 4 factions around New Eden will, as was stated, tug a war, but the winning condition it's a winning condition where you're making money because you have turned it to your advantage, the systems, and then you're able to make money and make through mostly loyalty points, LP. But there is no actual surrender. There is no final win. I think there was an established win condition that players put in there that when they flipped over all the what would you call it, contestable systems, then you achieved a win. And I think the
Yeah.
first people to do that were like Caldari, right? They're the ones that won the faction war first.
Yeah, and initially CCP gave a medal the first time a faction did that.
Right. And this is interesting because it really meant something at the time, because there was a book written called The Empyrean Age. And the Empyrean Age essentially was the origin story of faction war. So if you can, buy that book and read it. It's great. It's actually a very good book, especially for EVE Online players. And that really sets off the faction war. So when the first faction war was when played by players, and months, or I think maybe it was more than a year after it started, Caldari won, it was terrible because the leader of Caldari was Tibus Heth, I think. And so it felt really, that's not necessarily the character you wanted to win. But anyway, so it came out of this book through the lore, through the backstory of EVE Online, but it was an actual mechanic in the game. And the mechanic was used to go back and forth, not ever to settle the faction war, but just to make money off it. And for a long time, it was used as a moneymaker. And I guess it still is.
Oh, yeah. You can see it right now.
Yeah, which gives you the background to what's going on here, that you guys are saying the faction war mechanics are kind of not doing it these days. So you had to come up with your own solution for people that just wanted to make money, that didn't actually want to play the story part of it.
Well, it's not only the story part of it. You don't need to be a role player to be in faction warfare, although the groups that are still in faction warfare tend to be at least somewhat role playish. But it's a PvP area of the game, or at least it should be in the opinion of many people that play it still or have played it in the past, and not a PvE cash grab, basically. So that's the thing where we objected basically to the things that were in place, and we tried to do something about it. And I mean, we can try to follow the further steps of the treaty to see where it actually ended up, because I think it reached some of its goals, if not all, obviously, because it only lasted for a month, the breakdown. But to go back to the collapse basically of the treaty.
Yeah.
As was explained, the Amarr had been in high tier for a long time. So if you're aware of faction warfare, it's basically like an ebb and tide of things. One side is in a high tier for a long time, usually, then slowly but surely it turns around, and the other side is in a high tier for a pretty long time, usually. We're talking months. And so it was about to swing into Minmatar favor anyhow. At least that was my interpretation of the situation. So we actually tried to not flip too many systems, to not get into a high tier during the initial days of the treaty, or weeks actually, because we knew that then more people would flock to the Minmatar side, and more people would plex the systems, and more people would push for the Minmatar mission systems. And therefore increasing the pressure on the Amarr that were actually doing the deplexing in those systems. And as they were already only a few left of them, that had to lead sooner or later to them burning out, which is basically what happened with a few people that are still active or were still active at the time in the treaty. So they basically just burned out by deplexing. We tried to help them somewhat. Some of us created Amarrian alts. It's hard to convince role players to actually run Amarr alts, as I have learned the hard way.
I think it was an advantage of a lot of the early Amarr supporter, that Dirt and Glitter, Amarrian Vengeance, for the most part, not role players, more like tied to Amarr from having been in Amarr for a long time. So we didn't have any problems rolling alts.
Yeah, so my experience in faction warfare is similar. So you get this spectrum of player. Some of them are role playing pretty hard, and that's a popular thing to do in faction warfare because of the ties to the Empire, right? But there are a large group of people that aren't role playing, but they still feel pretty tied to their empire that they're defending, right? So like when Fed Up was in faction warfare, it was really hard to get them to do things like that. Like this is in our best interest to kind of help the Caldari a little bit, and people would just backlash. As logical as it sounds, that's against their nature as a faction warfare player, right? So I can kind of get that.
Plus, getting the Amarr side to deplex. When you're at tier 1, no one wants to deplex.
Yeah, so that's another point. Deplexing, the defensive action of faction warfare, is often done uncontested. It's often hard to keep up on, and you're getting paid very little to do it. So there's not a whole lot of incentive to go into a complex and spin around the beacon without any fighting going on for hours. Sometimes it takes to bring the system down to a place where you're comfortable, and then not even being paid. It's hard to get those people in there.
Well, to be fair, I mean, we had the best, or at least in my opinion, the best plexing guys from Amarr were actually in the treaty and were doing it until they actually burned out. Those guys have deplexed and plexed systems in the last years. That's just insane. I don't know what kind of life they're having outside of EVE, but it can't be too much when they plex 24/7. At least it feels like it sometimes. But they burned out through it, and so we actually saw some of some notorious mission runners flipping systems back to Minmatar then.
I think that's a new thing. Actually, having the actual farmers drop dreads on IOB to flip them. I've never seen that.
That was somewhat of a success, I guess, if you want to call it that. But yeah, so I think it was around 7 systems of the Amarr fell within, I don't know, 2.5 weeks.
Yeah. I think one of the difference, I think, is Minmatar, I don't think, was willing to AWACS to support the treaty. Early on the Amarr side, there was a lot of AWACSing going on to support the treaty.
So AWACSing means people that aren't supporting the treaty are in there countering what you're trying to do, and then you blow their ship up or kill them, and you're in the same militia. It's a term in gaming called AWACSing. You're supposed to be friendly, but you're killing them, right?
Yeah. And
so how did that impact your standings, though? Right? Your standings can tank really hard. Yeah. So faction warfare also, in order to be in the militia of some empire, you have to have good standing with said empire. Right? So if you're an alliance in the Amarr militia, you need to maintain good standings with the Amarr empire. So by killing your fellow Amarrian militia, you take standing hits against that militia, and if you do it too much and you drop to negative standings, you can be removed from the militia, the whole alliance. Even if one corporation is good and one's bad, if your overall security status is down, you can be removed. The game will remove you from the militia, right?
Yep.
Yeah, but I think we call them jokingly traitor Amarrs, the ones that signed the agreement. I think they had way too many inactives in their ranks that had good standings to really be bothered by that.
Between inactive and moving alt, it's easy to standing tank.
Yeah, and I don't think Usha Khan would have had a problem with the standing, but again, I don't want to really call it the role play alliance because it's a voluntary thing. You don't need to be a role player to be in Usha Khan. So a lot of people had issues with actually shooting other Minmatar militia members. That's totally correct. And we tried to convince them rather than shoot them, but that's been our way in general. We didn't really take part in a lot of civil wars, and the Amarr seem to be somewhat fond of it, just shooting at each other every now and then.
Well, it's a quarterly pastime.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's a tribal thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then systems flipped, and that was basically the Amarrian side breaking down. We stick to it for a while longer, and maybe we can come now to this part of the treaty, what CCP did with it. Because there was a lot of pressure on Usha Khan specifically to break the treaty early on. I think when we last spoke, this was already going on. Give me a second to check. 17, you said, right? Yeah, on the 17th there was actually the post of an Amarrian RPer, Asia Alkan, in character forum IGS, and she basically accused the Amarr and the Minmatar who signed that treaty as being traitors to their cause. Right, exactly that. Militia corruption, breaking the deafening silence on dirty deals. And that put a lot of pressure, first only from the player community, from the rplay player community on both sides, basically. But then CCP actually jumped in and had 2 NPC characters from the Amarr side respond to this, and basically condemning the whole thing. Condemning the whole thing. That's something else. And telling all Amarr RPers to go and retake Starkman, and all Minmatar RPers to go and take Floss's Win, because they said that the Amarians would start enslaving a planet in Floss's Win. So that is obviously something that Minmatar role players don't want to happen. And they ordered the Amarr players to retake Starkman, which they wrote wrong in that thing called it RZ or whatever. So they put pressure from the RP side of things, and that pressure only increased over time with more and more news coming out about this taking of slaves in Floss's Win. And lately also Minmatar characters, NPCs, jumping in and calling for an end of this treaty and for Ushra Khan to take back Floss's Win. Yeah. But also one thing that, I mean, for once it actually increased the reach of the treaty. I mean, we were here on Talking to Stations. There were other podcasts that reported about it, news articles, whatnot. And now we also got CCP actually interacting with it, which was nice. And already in the first news article about it, I don't know if you have it up right now, but someone in some NPCs said something about corruption within the 24th Crusade and hinted at the missions. So they already gave us kind of a little hint that there was a chance that they would do something about the missions by claiming that there might be corruption involved, which was a spin that we had thought about from an RP perspective.
Yeah, you know, if nothing else, you've got their attention, right? You got them jumping in and validating what you're doing with lore and RP, which I think is fantastic.
It is definitely.
There was also a couple of statements in Vegas about possibly nerfing LP for level 4 missions and some other things they hinted at. One of which they did, which was taking out tethering for if your faction doesn't control the system, you can't tether.
Yeah, I wanted to get into that too. How did that play at all here? No, because that change came really late.
Well, it not within the treaty, but the consequences of the treaty, it played a role with them. Garmatar is obviously right. They actually announced in Eve Vegas that they going to do some changes in faction warfare and did a statement about it, that they never did changes or not big changes because they always were planning on making one big update on faction warfare, and they never got to it, so they kind of neglected it for a while because they always thought soon. And now they announced some things. It was the Citadels was something. Then the LP rewards for the missions were supposed to go down soon, TM. And some other smaller stuff to just change things in faction warfare. So far, most of it has been promises and no action, but we can claim that they at least looked at it. So that's that. And in one of the latest lore articles, news articles, they actually had the 4 empires drafting out a reform of the militia pact. So currently the militia war is basically covered by an agreement of all 4 sides that allow this war to happen in the war zones and only there. And they're currently drafting a rewrite or an addendum to that treaty. So I read that, and many others have, as there is some faction warfare update in the making right now.
Right. We're all hoping anyway.
Yeah, hope dies last.
I mean, and you got hope because you got, but you got some iteration with the Citadel, right? And it clearly doesn't go far enough, but there is iteration. There was a change there, so that could, if that works out, could lead to other things, right? If that, the war zone is very complicated because of how you got this faction warfare thing going on in Losec, but there are so many other entities in Losec that live there. We refer them, or faction warfare people refer to people not in militia as pirates, right? So we call them pirates, but they're really neutral entities living in and around there that have their own set of citadels and their own set of things they want to do, and the ability to free port stuff and like build infrastructure that interferes with that war mechanic, right? So it's fairly complicated system to work on.
There's also
It
a lot
is.
of recruitment.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean recruitment?
He's gone from Discord. I don't know why, but he's gone.
We dropped him.
Disappeared. I'll try to grab him.
Okay, so on the note of the citadels or in faction warfare and the things that they might change or where they have done something, I don't know how many people are aware, but due to this whole roleplay thing, they actually deployed Diamond Red NPCs in Floss's Win, which was under the control of the Amarr at this point. And those NPC fleets actually reinforced our structure there, our citadel. I think I linked you the battle report of the structure timer for that. So there was like, I don't know, 80 battleships with a 30-man Logi wing. And
Diamond Reds.
Yeah, Diamond Reds. They heard. And
yeah, they sure do.
The funny part is that right before that structure timer, the update with no tethering in enemy space came online. So we couldn't tether on the Citadel for the structure timer, which was a bit of a problem.
Wow. Okay.
So
We got got back.
Over your little hurricane over there.
Well, so it was. I like the change. At least it's something, right? But for us, it was kind of a bad timing thing. And those Diamond Red actually didn't only appear in Floss's Win. They also appeared in Dahl and reinforced one of our structures there. Same for Lulm. So they had at least 3 systems where NPC Diamond Red reinforce our structures. One of them being a Fortizar. So, and they came back for the timers.
Wow.
So those Diamond Reds put it into armor and then into structure. And then it went down in this engagement where we actually had I think a pretty solid setup against the Diamond Reds and even the few Amarr loyalists that showed up. But then a pirate gang came by. They had a few CVA members amongst them, I think, but mostly I would say they weren't there to defend the Amarr Empire, and they then destroyed it.
Yeah.
So finished it off.
The Amarr side did not add much to form up for this. And definitely not. I think the Minmatar formed 40 battleships or 35 battleships, something like that.
Yeah, I think we were between 20 and 30. Yeah.
Okay, so let's call it 30. So you had it well handled basically, and we didn't have the numbers to contest. CVA had volunteered to help, but they got a bunch of jump bridge reinforced, and they could not really form. So the CVAs that showed up were just on their own accord, burning in something light and trying to get in on it. The main gang that dropped in, I think they were just attracted by the blood.
I wonder who reinforced their jump bridges. Wasn't me.
Well, good job. But it didn't save our citadels, and I mean, we could have cut our losses there, but we thought for the role play we should throw some dreads at them, although we knew that they would be dead once we signed with them. But it was a fun engagement, and all that was basically initiated by Diamond Reds reinforcing our structures. Now the funny thing is, again, they came back. They were somewhat, I don't know, piloted, I guess, by a CCP employee. At least that's what I think.
Are you talking about the drifters?
Well,
no.
Come again? No, not as in being in the ship, but like dropping them in the system and giving them a target or something like that. CCP Delegate Zero was involved with that, and after the fight on the Roleplay's primary Discord, he actually said that he learned a lot today during that fight. So I guess he was at least watching it, if not coordinating the NPCs. I don't know how that works, to be honest. But yeah,
interesting.
And
what's
now,
really interesting is that this timer and your fight occurred as the change happened.
Yeah.
So I guess we learned a lot about how that mechanic may affect a faction warfare fight, right? So your citadel that you were defending was in a Amarr system, controlled system, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
At that point. That day is also the day where we officially dropped out of the treaty. Shortly before that fight, I sent out the alliance mail that we would retake Floss's Win for RP reasons, and because there was only like 2 or 3 systems on the Amarr side left that hadn't been taken. People were already starting to run missions, and now we are in tier 3, and you see the mission runners all over the place. Tier 4 even, god damn it.
Yep, the mission runners are already updating. Once the mission runners are fully active, they upgrade the system. To keep their payout.
So upgrading the system is another mechanic in faction warfare. Just like in nullsec, there's an iHub in the system, right? And if when militia controls it, they can go to that iHub and upgrade it with some of their LP that they have, and that pushes the tier up. So like if you want to maintain your tier 4, there's 2 ways to do it. You can capture more systems, or you can go and upgrade iHubs, donate your LP to do that, and that that keeps the tier level up and keeps everyone getting paid.
You're not going to go above tier 2 without upgrading.
Okay, right, exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, now there's actually Minmatar Diamond Rats in Floss's Win after we liberated the system with the help of Electus Matari and some other Minmatar loyalists. And that's kind of cool. I like it. The whole interaction, and I mean, all this treaty brought was basically attention from CCP, them promising us some changes, and now the whole RP community had a blast, at least I hope, with the story arc that we had there.
I think it was fun.
Yeah, well, not just them, the people watching, I think, it's become very interesting to watch you guys to see what kinds of things are happening there. So it's just it's become imaginative, not in the role play sense, but just in the emergent gameplay sense, how you guys are creating unique situations.
Well, then I would like to this moment to thank actually the 2 of the main initiatives, that's the right word? Anyway, Flying Hot Pocket and Templar Dane, who brought this to being more or less by themselves by initiating this treaty and the blockade. Flying Hot Pocket has sadly deleted his character and stopped playing due to being burned out and not feeling like he wants to play Eve at this point. Maybe he comes back, I don't know. And Templar Dane didn't react to my questions if he would join me here today, and said that he would be back once CCP has done something about faction warfare.
So some discouragement for those guys. Yeah.
But I mean, we had one of our members that likes to do Reddit posts and presentations and everything. He actually looked into the activity in faction warfare. So how faction warfare developed over time. I linked you something for that as well, I think. And you can see that activity drops over the years, and I think we are at an all-time low. So to people that complain about the treaty killed PvP, it actually didn't. The PvP died ages ago, and now we just see that continuing downfall, which I hope CCP can still save by making some good changes that people log in again, rejoin faction war. But I don't know. They actually need to do something to see that.
Yeah, there was a post by Shorkan's Strepan. You probably know.
Yeah, that's the guy. Yep, that's the.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and link that in TIS Discord and in the Twitch so you guys can see that chart. It is, but according to this, it's not an all-time low. Hold on, let me get that up for you guys.
Well, I don't think December is in it, but.
Oh yeah, good point. There, we'll try to get it up, but you guys can look at it there.
I mean, okay, if you count the pre-Inferno release, then we might not be at the bottom yet. Yeah, but ever since then, it's down a lot. I mean,
Right. So this is what I was pointing at. So Faction War came out in 2008. It actually was a bit late. It was supposed to come out in 2007. I think it came out in 2008. And it didn't really it took off initially, but then people thought, oh, this isn't, the novelty wore off and it kind of stayed at a low level for a long time. But then Inferno came around in 2012 and they made some major changes to it. It was a revamp, and you can see the amount of stuff that was going on. This is a Faction War ships destroyed per month. Skyrocketed and stayed up for a while, but it's slowly been going down since 2017. And now it's hitting an all-time low, which is reminiscent of the early days, how unused it was.
Yeah. I mean, I think 2013 was Bernhuola and some other major events in the Amarr Minmatar war zone, at least. Mm-hmm. And ever since then, I mean, it goes up and down, but in total, there's a trend, and that trend goes clearly downwards. And that's not just with the kills, it's also with the activity. I mean, we had like 60 active militia members or 60 people in militia chat for weeks or months now. And as soon as we get up to tier 4 or 3 at the point where I was looking at it, we went up to 120. So basically half the militia just came online, or at least you can say that they just came online because we were in a high 60. Tier. We had 60. Oh, not in US time zone. I'm talking EU time zone, right?
Right, because Amarr in US time zone is 24 to 30.
Right now it's 52, but it is a bad time zone for Minmatar in general.
Mm-hmm. Are you guys still hoping that CCP makes, it sounds like you are, changes that'll help revitalize faction warfare?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, sure.
What else is there that can provide such a easy and quick introduction to PvP to players that don't have like tons of SPs and inject into a capital to be in a blub somewhere in nullsec?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I mean, that's how I came into the game. Right, it was my introduction to PvP. It's where I cut my teeth. Not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but how much of faction warfare is suffering because low-sec in general is suffering for many reasons?
Well, we see it with the local pirates, right? Even the local pirates are struggling exactly, for content. Yeah. So it's that. But to pick up on, to pick up on the hopes for faction warfare, definitely. And I would also add, it's not only for beginners something that they can enjoy. It's also, and I said that on the last talking station as well, it's something for casual players. You don't need to be online for every ping. You don't need to be online 24/7 to see progress and to make your own story. You can log in after a work day, play for 2 hours, and have PvP fun. If the warzone is healthy, if there's enough people in the warzone, which currently there aren't. But in general, back in the day when I started playing faction warfare, there was fights all over the place. You log in, you have 2 hours of PvP fun, then you log out again.
Yeah.
And
it really was, sorry to interrupt you, but it really was one of the things that lured me into the game was you come in and you're part of these corporations and they go to war and all this stuff. And I thought, yeah, but I don't really want to get involved with people. I want to play this and then get off. And the convincing point was one of them, well, they're going to have, PvP. You can fight for the Empire, so you don't have to join a group. And I was like, oh, I could do that because I could do what you just said. Come in, play the game a little bit, and then leave with no commitment to other people that I needed to stay online for.
Well, I would still think that as for most parts of EVE, it's way more fun if you have a group that you can join and that you can play with that help you out, especially in the... But that casual aspect that you have... I mean, we have members that log in once a week for 2 hours. And obviously we have less and less of them because there isn't that instant faction warfare PvP fun anymore that we had for a while at least. But we still have them. And that's something that, as Silva said, a lot of people, if you go into nullsec, if you go into the PvP groups that are outside of faction warfare right now, a lot of them will see in their history, yes, I was in faction warfare. I started there, or at least I made a stop in faction warfare. There's so many people that went through faction warfare and now are all over the place and are enriching the game with their experience that they at least partly got from faction warfare. That neglecting that, well, sometimes it's called the kindergarten of PvP, which some of the faction warfare members obviously don't like to hear, but it's something that where people can get into PvP, and then they can go out and fly bigger ships and fly whatever. I don't mind people going from us further into Null or wherever they want to see the big fights. I don't mind that, as long as there is somewhat of a constant stream of new people to replace them, so that we have a decent population.
Yeah, I don't call it kindergarten, but I would refer them. Matter knows this. I refer to that as the middle class. Right, the guys who are semi-casually playing that sort of feed the day-to-day content, right? They're not big conflict war-driven, they're not so strategic. They just want to get out in a ship and fight whoever's out there. That sort of middle-class layer of EVE, in my opinion, is sort of suffering as a whole, not just faction warfare, but in low-sec in general. The old impetus for being in that middle class, that the reason why you wanted to be there is because you could cut your teeth there, you could make a name for yourself, you get a kill board going, and then suddenly you catch the attention of a big null group, and maybe after a year or two of faction warfare you move on. That sort of flow has short-circuited for many reasons, I think. So you don't get that flow from high sec guys who are doing like security missions like me, right? I think I'm a pretty classic flow. I was doing security missions. I kind of wanted to do more PvP, but still in that like RP thing, and faction warfare is perfect for that. I can still fight for the Galente and do some PvP, and then you get good, and then you might look to higher ground. That whole flow to me is short-circuited. Do you agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree that there is a problem with that, and that there's just not enough people coming after or coming grow newly. I don't know the right English.
New people coming into the game to go through that process.
Well, yeah, I mean we had a few veterans joining with the treaty that came into faction warfare and said, "Hey, I heard about this there and there, and I want to try it." We definitely had that.
What do you think, Ga, about that?
So the new blood is needed, and the veterans are needed in faction warfare. You kind of need that ecosystem. And when one side turns into more of like either not enough veterans or not enough new players, it kind of becomes an LT and it just dies. And I think on the Amarr side, a lot of the corps were ISP or I experienced, and few active play, and you just end up with ping online, like people going on fleets, shooting stuff, and then losing interest in the game. You don't have the new blood to come in. We need that new blood.
Yeah. But on that note, I mean, it's always also a question of how the militia is structured, right? So what kind of groups are in the militia? For example, I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, there was 2 new groups in Amarr faction warfare. Young, fresh alliances or corporations that had a lot of members that had no clue about PvP and were killed a lot. And then they had a big civil war and basically eradicated those 2 new groups by themselves without us even doing anything. And cut themselves, at least in my opinion, in their own flesh by, war.
Well, Stein Control here in chat says, New Bros don't stand a chance in faction war. In fact, most people don't. How difficult is it for a pilot to get in there and succeed every once in a while?
I don't think it's too hard. I mean, there is obviously a lot of quote-unquote elite PvPers, solo PvPers around, and there's also a lot of blobs. And again, we come to the you will enjoy the game way more if you're in a group. You can join a group that teaches you how to use stuff, that helps you with logistics, because reshipping in Rennes or Heck or Amarr is kind of shitty because you always need to fly all the way back to the war zone. So having something in the war zone or close by is cool. Usually groups help you with that. And they teach you what to do. For example, they teach you which kind of engagements are not healthy for a T1 frigate and which might be worth a try. There's obviously a lot of stuff to read about solo PvP in general all over the place. But to have a group that teaches you that helps you with fits, that helps you with logistics, is gonna be so much help, and so important to keep people in the game. If we have a new bro that joins the alliance or the corps, I don't think it's hard for them, as in they're getting beaten all over the place, because usually we take them into the fleet and we show them everything within the fleet. But if you try it on your own, then it can be hard, I guess.
Yeah, well, even general's hard. But I think some advantages to faction warfare for a new pilot is that the complex mechanic, right? There are tiers of complex mechanics. There's the novice that only allows frigate up to pirate, right? In there. So you could go in there with a T1 frigate, not worried about a cruiser or something. And then the other advantage is you can choose whether or not you want to take that fight, because there's a gate there. So if you're in the complex and you're using your D-scan and you're in an Atron and a daredevil shows up outside the gate, you can, in most cases, just warp off, right? That sort of choice doesn't exist in other places of the game, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Oh, Goss, some last words on faction war before we transition into the next thing. Do you have any last comments?
Amarr Victor, and please join.
Okay, no, this still has to do with faction war, but it's just we're going to wrap up that topic. I wanted to ask Harkin, who's the CEO of Ashra Khan. You guys just completed what, 15 years?
Yeah, but I mean, obviously not me. My character is only 6 years old, but yeah, Ashra Khan as a whole survived somehow for 15 years. We actually had a little death ball tournament to celebrate that, which was interfered with by an NPC diamond fleet reinforcing the citadel where we formed for that tournament. But yeah, that's it's a long and proud history. I really am very honored and happy that I inherited such a great alliance, as in storied one. But to be fair, when I joined, there was like 15, maybe 20 active members, and we built it up from there again. So it's a way different Ashra Khan in many ways than it was 10 years ago.
Well, I remember Ashra Khan, from way back when. But one thing I remember about them that was kind of special was they had these two guys that were really funny, and they had a podcast that I listened to quite a bit called Potted, and they were Ashra Khanners. If you were back around that time, it was 2010, 2013 area. It was a great podcast. The guys were hilarious.
I joined 2014, so I unfortunately didn't get those guys.
The sad thing about that podcast is you could see they were kind of burning out, and they were both like, yeah. By the end, they were just gate camping with bombers or something. They were kind of burned out. But anyway, 15 years, it's amazing tradition. Ashra Khan is one of those staples of EVE Online. If you ever get a chance to watch the trailer from CCP, when EVE turns 15 years old, you'll see that in the middle of that video, they go through the history of EVE Online. They have these giant, I don't know what you would call them, but they're describing the great rivalries of EVE Online, and there is Ashra Khan and CVA. So they've been around a long time. All right, go ahead.
Yep. No, all fine.
Yeah, fantastic organization, Ashra Khan. Okay, let's real quick. I want to ask you guys about something that's fun, right, Silver? What do you think of these? We'll start with Silver. What do you think of these filaments that people are talking about?
I think that these nullsec filaments are one of the best things that CCP's introduced in a long time, because that middle class I was talking about, that craving for day-to-day content, is given a boost with these things, right? So basically how it works is there's a couple levels of them. They go up to 50 pilots, right? So you can take this filament, you get in a fleet of 25 to 50, you get together, you light this filament, and it transports you to a random part of nullsec. And the reason why I like that is because it's kind of known that this is going to be a one-way trip, because I could be transported all the way across the universe and I don't want to burn back, right? So you start to get in these bite-sized groups in engageable ships, and everyone's doing it, so the chances are that you'll run into another group, or even if you wind up in someone's staging, you're in something maybe not so threatening, and then you wind up getting these good fights. I've been having fantastic fun just waiting for a group to pop up in our space, and we run over there, we have a fight, and then I go into someone else's space. We had a great run through Delve last night. I think it's been a great tool to get people up, out, and in ships. It's been fantastic.
Okay, we didn't describe what these things are and where you get them and how they're used. Can you describe that?
Sure, the filaments are what you're getting in your logon rewards for the 13 days of Eve. 13 days? Yeah. They're in the crates that you're redeeming when you log in. So when you open your crate, there'll be these filaments in there. And they're named after reindeer, if you have picked that up. So there's like a Vixen one, a Donner one, and each one represents a different size fleet you can take with you. And it's only subcaps, and it's like 10, 25, and 50 sizes. And then you form a fleet, you go out in space, your FC will light the filament, and your whole fleet gets transported to some random system in nullsec. Similar to how a Triglavian filament works. It actually looks similar to that.
And they expire.
They do expire.
On January 15th.
On January 15th. So if you got them in your hold, definitely give it a shot because it's a lot of fun.
It's been awesome.
Yeah.
So have you guys done it? Have you guys taken a trip out to nullsec and visit me?
I think we've done 3, 4, something like that. We've thrown scepter fleets and some battlecruisers and all sorts of random stuff. And got stumped a few times, got a bunch of good kills. It's been a lot of fun.
I mean, it's pretty funny. I did light a filament and wound up only 6 systems away from my home system, so that happened.
That's what you got for living in Null. Well, we haven't, or at least I haven't done it yet. But a member of us, Paul, came up with an idea that we all would go into T1 haulers and then all light different filaments so that we all are scattered all over Null, and then the first person to get back to the starting point wins something. And that is something that we're most likely going to do around Christmas as a little event. So
I like that.
Basically,
I love that.
a rally to try to come back home.
Yeah, we did something similar last night where we teleported and then did an autopilot race back from. We were like all the way. We lived down south. And we were all the way north. So we're like, okay, set your autopilot home, and whoever gets home first wins a prize. And somebody made it all the way back to our Keepstar and an Osprey, which was funny.
Yeah. So yeah, it looks like it's been a little bit of a hit among people who want some randomness in their PvP adventures and also exploration adventures. I think this is really good for explorers as well. I think Ashtarothi and I were talking about that earlier. It creates kind of a walkabout. You go out and you meander around areas that you wouldn't know, and this will randomize that for you so that you don't have to decide where you're going to go. You can literally get dropped off somewhere and find your way around that area to explore new things. It's kind of cool. What I don't like about them is it's created some kind of a mechanic where people are getting tricked into fleeting up in high sec where they're supposed to be safe if they're in some kind of a new player situation or if they're in a station inside a JITA. And if they fleet up, then if you undock and if you're actually, I forget if your security setting is set to
Yellow or red, then somebody can zap you with them to nullsec where you're fair game. So basically, people are being kidnapped from market hubs if they're not careful.
Yeah,
which is still kind of funny.
I think it's great and very funny. What the part that I don't like is I know not to do that, but I'm constantly having to say, no, I don't want to join your fleet. So I finally had to use the setting on the account. I want to refuse all invites. And that's the first time I ever had to use that.
And that's not good. It's also one of those cases where a new player could just die and not even know what the heck happened to them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, people have to trick you to turn, because you start out green by default. Nothing can hurt you with your green, and you can't be teleported away. But if they trick you into turning it yellow or red, then they've got you.
Sneaky.
Go ahead, Harkin. Sorry about that.
No, fine, no, fine. I was just about to say, as always, access kills it then.
Well, once it
People
gets
just-
out and it's funny and people are like, wow, I want to do that. That's exciting gameplay. Then everybody starts doing it and then it becomes a problem. It's like that for everything. Yeah, what else we have here? Well, there was oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say a snafu with the Hypernet and the early items, right?
Yeah, so this is just a couple of news items here we wanted to quickly go over, but there was a duping bug that happened for Hypernet where people were being able to reimburse items they had previously sold on the Hypernet. Now, this is a select few people. I think it might have been as much as, say, I don't know where I heard this, so I can't validate it, but I will say the number that I think it was like 25% of the sales that happened in the first few hours, something like that, or the first day. Those people found items that they had sold back in their redeem queue, which is where these 13 days of holiday, what is it, 13 days of Eve. I was going to say Christmas, but it's not. 13 days of Eve login rewards, they come into a redemption queue, and then you pull them into the game. Well, stuff that they had sold on Hypernet was showing up in that queue, which was really weird. And that created all sorts of problems if you think about it, because here are injectors that you sold, and say you sold 8 of them and you get those back, then immediately you know there's something wrong. So what do? People inject them right away so they can't be confiscated. Or if you sold a Nix, or if you sold a Super Capital Titan even, and you went to a wormhole, like a C1 even, could you redeem that Nix into a wormhole, which couldn't get in any other way? So they created problems right away. The result is those capital ships and a lot of the stuff was reconfiscated by CCP. But some stuff, they said, we're just gonna let you have it. It's a bank error in your favor. So some of the smaller things they didn't bother to try to fix. So lucky them.
Yeah, it's interesting. You guys been messing around with Hypernet at all?
I have not touched it.
Neither do I, but I had to tell people not to use Intel channels to post their all over the place. Some members really got full in on that and bragged with what little they paid for this ship and for that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I heard that one of the requests from FCs was, can we have a button to shut off Hypernet while people are in fleet?
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny. Okay, so there's another thing going on. There's obviously there was over the weekend an announcement by Vili, I think on Friday or Thursday, where he said he was going to take his group, which is Test, that leads the Legacy Coalition, up north, way north, to fight Sort Dragon and the Dead Coalition. He called it GOTG, Guardians of the Galaxy, but that's their old name. They're actually now called Dead Coalition. So he was going to go up there and fight them because of redacted. We don't know. It's under NDA, the actual reason that he thinks that Sort is needs to be dealt with. And a little bit of the situation that we could tell you is they both sit on CSM, Council of Stellar Management, as representatives of players. Now, each of these guys, Vili, of course, has Test and Legacy Coalition, and Sword Dragon has Siberian Squad and Ranger Regiment. That's a Siberian group, Russian, and then a Chinese group, the Ranger Regiment. And those guys back him. It's a lot of players, and so he has a voting base. So both men have voting bases. So Vili's reasoning is that he thinks that Sword Dragon is bad for the game in the CSM. Sorry, he's bad for the game in CSM as a representative, and therefore he is committed to annihilating Sword's voting block, and that's what the war is over. One of the interesting aspects of this is that one of the powerful aspects of Dead Coalition, and the reason that Sword Dragon has survived for so long, is that he is in Australia, and he has made friends with Chinese and Siberian Russians, and those are all in the same time zone, which is a very late and unpopulated time zone. So in other words, when his group is on and powerful, at their most powerful, most people are asleep either in Europe or in America. So that's allowed him to kind of control a time zone or be at least very influential in it. The other group that is in that time zone is Winter Coalition. And Vili and Test with Legacy has just taken on, over a period of months and months, Winter Coalition. So Vili's perspective is that we know how to fight a time zone war against Australian time zone. So it's not something that we're afraid of. And that's another aspect of him going to war with Sword Dragon's group. The war itself hasn't happened. It's in the process of plans being made and movements of troops being arranged. I think that's what's going on. However, Dead Coalition is already under a lot of pressure from NCPL and Horde. Those groups are known as PanFam, and PanFam has already been putting a lot of pressure on Dead Coalition up there in the north, and that remains a situation. So Test getting involved with possibly all of Legacy is an interesting angle on the war. And again, it comes from a personal conflict, kind of aligned with Council of Stellar Management and player influence into the game's development. So it's got a lot of different aspects that are kind of interesting. Right. Anyone have any information on that?
Nothing additional.
Yeah, okay. We all hear the same things.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, well, listen, we don't want to get too far away from faction warfare. We want to thank you guys for showing up today, especially on such short notice and stuff. But it's great to have you guys here and to see you here.
Yes, and good
Thanks.
work in the war zone.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, congratulations on 15 years, Usher Khan, and Ga, congratulations on moving from Dirt and Glitter to your own situation. What's the name of your corporation again?
The Damtorset on the guard.
Does name have a meaning?
Damtorset is the imperial capital of Amarr.
Ah, cool.
Nice. All right, guys, thanks very much. Silver, do you have anything else?
That's it for me, Merrill. Thank you for joining me today on the Midweek show.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Oh, this is good. I like this. This is, if you guys want to help out Talking in Stations, we'll always encourage you to support us on Patreon. Of course, watch our shows, rate us on whatever system you listen to podcasts on, because all that stuff helps surface Talking in Stations to other newer players, and that's always helpful to us. So really appreciated that.
Yeah, come join us on Discord as well.
Yeah, if you want to hang out with us, we hang out on Discord every day, all day long. You see CCP in here, hanging out with us too. So it's a good place to get information and have some community while you are away from the game. Last thing I want to tell you about is at 3 a.m. Pacific time, but I forget what it is for UTC. We are having a special show on Saturday for Eve Echoes, and that's going to be run by Who's a Fish, who's our Eve Echoes evangelist. She loves that game, and she's supporting it, and she's going to have the producer of Eve Echoes on, and possibly some surprise guests that are going to be very important to listen to about the development of Eve Echoes. And you may think that Eve Echoes is a small thing that you'll never play, but I personally have seen people already around me in real life that play these very strategic long-term games on their phone, and they're carrying it around with them all the time. And just to give you an idea of how popular it was right off the bat, don't quote me on these, I'm not sure, but I was told that there was some 230,000 players that were participating in the beta. Now, I don't know if I can't verify that number, but I'm throwing it out there anyway. So it's a huge number anyway. So check it out. I know that it's just in beta, but it's going to be released early next year. So you might want to check this out. So again, Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific, that would be 6 in the morning Eastern time. There's going to be podcast, or actually a stream with the producers and with Who's a Fish on behalf of Talking in Stations. And then Sunday, we're going to have CCP Convict, CCP Dopamine, and CCP Spider all on for a review of what happened this year in 2019 on the CCP side of things, the developers of the game. What happened in their world, and so what were some of their highlights? Remember, they went on this huge world tour, and Convict got hired in the middle of that, so it'll be interesting to see what was going on behind the scenes, and you can catch that on Sunday. And so we might have some extra news then as well. But for now, I want to say thank you very much for showing up, and we will see you next time on Talking in Stations.
Night, everyone.